lot of different ones, but we've talked about some features that we think may favor Stanford. King, if Stanford's going to pull off the upset or if Oregon's going to dominate, what is going to determine the outcome of this game?
I think we're going to be sounding a bit like a broken record here because everything that scared us about Oregon and everything, all the questions we want answered about Stanford are what is going to determine this game. If Stanford's offensive line cannot stand up to this Oregon front seven, it's not going to be a competition. This game will be over very early because we know Oregon playing at home in the opener is going to have some offensive energy. I struggle to think their offense is going to be great this year, but you know that in game one, with all off-season to prepare, that opening drive chart, they're going to put some points on the board. And there is a world in which Oregon's defense just totally obliterates this Stanford offensive line, and the Cardinal can't get any points on the board. And if Stanford is not able to establish some run game, then it's really going to make it tough for Davis Mills. I think Oregon's secondary is vulnerable. You're losing 3 out of 4 starters. That was supposed to be the strength of your team this year, but 3 guys opted out. And because of that, I think Stanford's wide receivers have the advantage in that matchup. But it will not matter if Stanford's offensive line cannot block Kayvon Thibodeau and the rest of this Oregon defensive line. And I think it will not matter if Oregon can just drop everybody back in coverage because they know Stanford cannot run the ball. And so we're going to find out a lot in the first couple of drives for the Cardinal about whether they can block this very scary Oregon front seven.
Yeah, and I think the key for this game for Stanford is going to be those receivers. Oregon was coming into this year with a lot of hype about their secondary, and deservedly so. But with those opt-outs, there's a little bit of a cushion there, where now Stanford can actually attack it and say, you know what? We've been betting on our receivers all offseason. We've been hyping them up. We've been saying Simi Fehoko. We've been saying Michael Wilson. We've been saying Osiris St. and Connor Wedington. And now we're actually going to show them on the field because they all had good seasons last year. Now we can have a great season with a full year of Davis Mills against a secondary that could be suspect. We don't know. Had a ridiculous number of interceptions last year and held opponents to 6 times below 10 points, including holding Stanford to just 6. So a very good defense. But now maybe there's an opportunity. Stanford can take advantage of that. Stanford was at 4th in the Pac-12 last year in passing offense, which seems kind of weird to say, but they were just throwing it so much of the time that they actually got the numbers by the end of the year. And yes, those were hollow numbers. They didn't mean much. As you mentioned earlier, they had 504 yards against Washington State in a loss, but they still accumulated those yards. They still showed that they can have the outcome. They can have the numbers. So where do they take advantage of that against Oregon? That's what we're really going to have to see.
I think you're exactly right that Stanford's wide receivers, another question we're going to answer is, are Stanford's wide receivers as good as we think they are? Because both of us happen to think they're very good, maybe the best group in the Pac-12. But that might be overhyping them just a bit, and if they struggle against Oregon, it will kind of bring that hype back down to earth. Now, on the other side of things, I think, one of the key matchups will be, can Stanford's defense get to Tyler Shough or Anthony Brown? I just happen to think Tyler Shough has a lot more upside at that position. I would be very surprised if Anthony Brown, the Boston College transfer, trots out there. But, either way, you're going to have a first-time starting quarterback. Tyler Shough was very good last year in limited action, 12 of 15 for 144 yards and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, that's in cleanup duty, but you don't see a lot of backups who come in and are that efficient, and also who are able to put up that kind of yards per attempt numbers. Usually they're just dinking and dunking. So maybe he's really good. But either way, he's got more pressure on him than he's ever had in his life. And you got a Stanford front seven that was not great last year, that we don't know whether they're going to be able to generate a big pass rush. So they got to get there. They got to make Shough uncomfortable. If they can slow down Oregon's run game, that will be fantastic because then you're going to force Tyler Shough to throw the ball. But whenever he drops back, they need to get after him and they need to confuse coverages. We know Dwayne Aquina is one of the best secondary coaches, defensive back coaches in the country. We know he's going to have his guys as prepared as they can be. All those Zoom meetings, that's where I think they maybe can utilize that Zoom training. Is can they throw some confusing coverages? Can they throw some confusing blitzes and get Tyler Shough off balance in his first start? Because I think ultimately the key to me is, can Stanford jump out to a lead? You don't want to play catch up against a team like Oregon who likes to run the ball and play solid defense. You want to make them play catch up and make their rookie or redshirt sophomore, but brand new starting quarterback be a little uncomfortable. You want to make them start to press, because then all of a sudden maybe you get a couple turnovers and can jump out to quite a lead early.
What do you do when you're the away team, whether it's in baseball or in football, where David Shaw always likes to take the ball on offense out of the gate? You score first, just like you're saying. That's what Stanford needs to do. That's how you shock a team. That's how you say, oh, we're not maybe that good. You put a little bit of doubt in their minds. That's what Stanford needs to do. And the best way that they could do that is turnovers. Stanford was bad last year in the turnover battle. They only got 12 on their defensive side. They gave up 13. That's -1 for the season. Oregon, 27 turnovers forced, only lost 11. That's +16. Oregon did not lose a game when they won the points off turnovers battle. That's pretty typical. But if Stanford can shock them by playing a really solid defensive game and then getting a few of those extra plays where they've been talking about all offseason, saying we need those bigger plays. It's not enough to just be physical. It's not enough to just bend and not break. But sometimes we need to make the big plays in the biggest moments. That's how Stanford could potentially win this game, where they're shocking Oregon. They're saying they're putting a little bit of doubt in their minds that maybe they're not good enough, and then doing something with it on the other end. They have to capitalize every single time they get anything thrown in their favor, because that's what you do when you're the underdog. When you're the underdog, you got to take advantage of everything that you're given.
And we don't want to put too much stock in the opening possession, but Daniel, I'm going to be honest. If Stanford takes the ball first, as they almost always do, and does not score, or particularly if they go 3 and out, and then Oregon comes right back with an easy touchdown, I'm going to feel very differently about this game very quickly, because I think it's all about setting the tone in these openers when you are the heavy underdog against a team that has heard all offseason about how they're the Rose Bowl champions, that they're the best team in the Pac-12. Jerry Palm at CBS has them in the playoff. I think there's other national media members out there who have them in the playoff. Listen, I don't think those national media members have dug into this Oregon roster too much. I don't think they're as good as they were last year, and last year they weren't even good enough to get to the playoff. So there's holes there, and I think if you expose those holes quickly with an early touchdown, and then maybe you force Tyler Shuck into a turnover or two, then you're looking at a very different game right off the bat. And, that's where David Shaw's decision to take the ball, which, I never like from a strategy standpoint, that's where it can really pay off when you are that road dog. And I think David Shaw is always trying to instill that road dog mentality.
And they're going to have to use that. They're going to have to use that to their advantage. They're going to have to use every single chip on their shoulder. They're going to have to use the whole weight of saying we're a 4-8 team, the entire offseason of saying you're not good enough, the entire offseason of missing a bowl game for the first time under the David Shaw era, the offseason of critiques from media all over about your recruiting, about your development, about every aspect of the program, and go out in the field and prove and show everybody that you're better than they say you are. And Stanford's going to have to use that, and it's going to be a lot of a mental game. We've heard it from nearly every single bubble that's been played, from the NBA to MLB, about how locked in you have to be to play in this game where there's no fans, where in the time between games, you're just alone. You're in your hotel room. You can't go out. There's a lot of extra mental aspect of this game that's going to be unique to this season. That why don't we say Stanford has an edge in that? Right? Because they're Stanford students after all. Why can't we give them that edge and say, if there's a matchup that's going to decide this game, it might be something on the field, it might be something off of it, where Stanford was able to take a little bit more advantage of those Zoom sessions than other teams because they were better students, right? Maybe they were able to better incorporate new things. Maybe their coaches were able to analyze the film and find something new. I think a lot of this game and a lot of this season is going to come down to edges that we really can't quantify, that we really can't notice on the field because they're so nebulous. They're so extra from what we've normally seen and typically seen in college football because this year is so unusual.
And Daniel, we've said it all along. If there's one team in the country who's going to be comfortable playing in silent stadiums with no fans, it is the Stanford Cardinal.
Absolutely. And on that note, want to tell everyone to